Where's the EQ on the reverb? Delay time? Turn up the feedback. Wait. Hand the condenser to the left and the dynamic to the right. Lower the threshold. Raise the output. Wait. Set the frequency range. High pass. Welcome to the Lady Audio Radio Show. Hey everyone, my name is Clara and I'll be your host today on this audio adventure. We have a really cool show for you this week with a mastering engineer. His name is Olav and his music goes by the name DVR, which stands for Danish Voice of Reason. He says there was alcohol involved in the creation of that name, and I'll have to have him on the show again to go into more depth about that. Before we get into the interview, I wanted to invite you to please visit ladyaudio.com to subscribe to the show. The Lady Audio podcast is available on iTunes, YouTube, and Podbean, and you'll find links to all of those places on the Lady Audio website. There's also a little button on the bottom of each page to donate to the show. Every little bit helps, and I appreciate it very, very much. Also, a future guest and another friend of mine have both inspired me and encouraged me to start creating short Logic Pro 10 or GarageBand tutorials and post them on my YouTube page. So I'm taking them up on that, and I wanted you to subscribe to the YouTube page to check that out in the near future. And now on to the show. Thanks. Bye. Our guest this week is Olav Christensen. Olav is a Brooklynite who is from Denmark. He's a musician who loves audio technology, and he applies his tech-savvy skills to mixing and mastering music, not only for himself, but for his clients. His music project is called DVR, which stands for Danish Voice of Reason. Olav, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it. So the Danish Voice of Reason is meant sarcastically. So it's not that I think that I'm the Danish Voice of Reason. It's a long story and it involves alcohol. So
okay,
there it is.
That's good though. I love that. I love that title. You started out as a musician. So what got you into recording and mixing music?
Well, I've always played an instrument, and I started out as a drummer. My mom gave me a set of really nice vintage Rogers drum sets when I was, I think, 14. I started from there and I became a vocalist, and it escalated. And at one point I wanted to record some of the stuff I did. And the problem is that at the time, they still are, studios are really expensive and not very accessible. And I still wanted to be in control. I guess at the end of the day, it's a financial reason, mostly. So I wanted to do it on my own, but also it was a little bit because I wanted to be in control of the process. So I wanted to keep, doing what I wanted, like having ideas in my head that I wanted to express. And being in a studio, that can get really time consuming, and the clock is ticking and it's expensive. So at a relatively young age, my first real recording gear was a Fostix reel-to-reel. It's like an 8-track. And I guess you can say I learned recording the hard way, I think some 30 years ago, really. And at the time, I pushed that 8-track to the limit. I remember experimenting vigorously with reverse reverb. and this was at a time when that was big, I guess, and everybody used it. So on an 8-track, on a reel-to-reel, I don't know if you're aware of this, but especially since everything is digital now and you can just do it with a mouse click. This was very analog, and you recorded the raw reverb from some signal like vocals or drums or something. And then you flipped the reel to reel, like the tape, physically, and had to figure out what part of the pickup would pick up that particular signal so you could like re-record it. And it was an interesting process, and I learned a great deal about it. And I always, whenever I deal with something similar, or you flip through some of the programs that are already in the plugins that you have nowadays, and say, oh, this is reverse reverb, and it sounds exactly what I did at the time, and now it takes me a nanosecond to pull up, while back then it would take a day to figure out how this would work. So it was an interesting process, and it was a lot of fun, and I chuckle when I stumble on something like that.
Yeah, I used some reverse reverb on one of the Mehicat's most recent songs, and it when in Logic and in what is it called, Space Designer, right. All it was just a little button that you click. So you have exactly. like regular reverb, and then if you click this certain button, you can have reverse reverb. Yeah. So yeah, it's
exactly. The young kids nowadays don't know how good they have it.
I know.
And so on. but yeah, I mean, technology has gone a long way, and stuff like that is so much fun, and yeah.
Cool. On your album Singles, that's what it's called, Singles, I really enjoyed the song Over the Moon. What's the story behind that song, and what type of keyboard sound did you use? It's really pretty song.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So I call this a lullaby for my daughter. And at the time I wrote it, my wife and I were expecting our daughter. And I really wanted to write a lullaby before she arrived, so I can play it to her when she actually got there. The kicker was that, she was 6 weeks early, and I had just finished the song when she was actually born. So I guess I got a little lucky there. She's 15 months now, and I'm pretty sure that she does recognize the song when I play it to her. And I'm quite proud of how it turned out. It sounds really balanced and nice, and it is exactly what it is. It's a lullaby, and it does put her to sleep. So I guess it works. The predominant keyboard on the track is a Fender Rhodes Mark I electric piano emulation from a company called Addictive Keys. And I really think they nailed it with this one. I pretty much love everything they do, and I have all of their products. They don't make a lot of products in terms of keys. I think they have 4 different ones, and all of them are absolutely excellent. Yeah, I'm a great fan of Addictive Keys. They also have the other side of this. It's called Addictive Drums. And that's basically everything you could wish for in terms of real drums recorded in various studios. It's really, really well done and really beautiful, and it sounds awesome.
Nice. With those drums, sorry, this is one of the questions I don't have down on the list, but since we're just chatting here, with those drums, do they come already with room reverbs and compression?
Yes, they do. Well, it's a plug-in, and it comes with everything in the box basically. Now I could separate everything out and do it in my my DAW and have use different kinds of compression or use different kinds of reverb, and I sometimes do. especially when I want to filter out, for instance, a different snare drum that is not in addictive drums. I separate it out to a different channel on the in the DAW, and then I add a reverb to that. Now, addictive drums is equipped with everything I would need for the whole drum kit, and it even has, the way it was recorded is it has close-up mics. Everything's mic'd up, and then they have separate room microphones that record the room itself, and that is on a separate feed. So you can add or detract whatever you want. I mean, the possibilities in this plugin are endless. So that's pretty much the only kind of drum I really use, unless I go crazy and want it to sound like a 50s organ drum box or something. Then it's obviously a different matter. But these are real drums and they sound real.
That's cool.
I'm lucky enough to have been a drummer, so I kind of understand how drum programming works. And that comes in handy when you try to work out how, for instance, a drum fill should sound and how it should feel, and it's a lot of nerdy work, but it's fun.
Yeah, I agree. Because drums are it's one of those instruments that is so multifaceted that you can go down rabbit trails just with a snare drum. And, so yeah, I completely understand. And being a drummer, I'm sure that definitely helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's little details like when you hit the bass drum really hard, the snare drum actually rattles a little bit, and they captured that in a separate feed as well. So you can add or detract on that little detail as well. I mean, they can make it sound so real and so awesome. I actually feel a little bad for the session drummers because this is for sure going to put some of them out of work.
Aw, that's too bad. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
sorry guys.
they still have to make the beats though, right?
They still have to make the beats, and that's where their main income should be, really, because not all of us out here are actually drummers, and you need somebody who actually understands the instrument to play it, and then you can fiddle with it in your DAW.
Cool. And when we spoke previously, you mentioned that you moved not too long ago. I moved recently too, and I wanted to ask you, what sound challenges have you faced in your new place, and what have you done or are thinking about doing to overcome the challenges?
Well, that is a really great question. I mean, first of all, this new place, this new setup I can't beat the view. It's so much better. And I love sitting here and working. It's a really, really nice space. I'm out in the middle. I'm not tucked away in some corner. The challenge, though, is that I am facing a brick wall, and it's kind of in a nook, not a very deep nook. It's only 8 inches deep, but it's enough to create unfortunate bass frequencies that kind of hurtle around everywhere. So what I've done is I've installed bass traps in those corners, and that did help. The other thing is it may sound like a big problem, but I don't actually mix very loud. I have 2 sets of speakers here. My main speakers are Event TR8s, and then I have my Aventone next to them. And when I do mix on the main speakers, that's when the bass could really cause trouble. But I doubt that my level of mixing. I like to listen to stuff very comfortably, and I feel that I can work longer. Because I simply don't get tired listening to audio and intently listening to something specific. it somehow works out. So it's not really an issue anymore, especially with the bass traps installed. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does. The room that I'm in is really reverberant, and I'm in the process right now of figuring out exactly what I need in regards to, putting up some kind of a foam treatment on the walls, where to put them on the walls, where exactly my desk is going to be, so that when I do start monitoring my mixes, how is that going to affect that, and just calibrating the room. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of tutorials that'll tell you what are the optimum spaces, but at the end of the day, every room is different. And sometimes you can overdo it. You can dampen a room too much, and you don't get you lose some of the frequency spectrum that you would need to actually I want to say judge, but kind of feel what you're listening to, and it's very tricky, and it's basically learning by doing. It's very, very, very hard to figure that out, and it takes a long time.
That's a good point.
Yeah. If you're in the middle of the room and you don't play very loud, you shouldn't have a lot of trouble. And there are lots of ways that you can position your speakers to avoid trouble. Really.
Right. You, on a different topic now, you sent me a really great picture of some of the effects pedals that you use.
Oh. Yeah.
Will you please let us know what they are and what they do?
Sure.
And I'll post the picture on the YouTube version of the show so people will know what we're talking about. What are all those pedals?
Well, first of all, it's my favorite subject, and full disclosure, I don't consider myself a guitarist by any standard, but I do like to play around with crazy sounds and do weird stuff with my guitar. So yeah, that's how it is. And I got hooked on pedals. So these are the pedals I currently have. I just acquired a Morley optical volume pedal, and from there I go into, it's pretty standard. I go into a TC Polytune. Then I go into a Ditto looper, also a TC pedal, and the looper I mainly use to basically when I'm recording stuff, I use it for calibrating sound for certain riffs. So I would play a certain riff, I would loop it, and then I would go to work on the pedals and get like nail the sound that I want to achieve on this, and then I stop the looper and play the riff and record it. Mm-hmm. So from there I go straight into a Dr. Scientist, the Elements. That is a really nice, very crazy pedal. It's basically an overdrive, a distortion, and a fuzz in one pedal. And since I would probably never use this board live, it's great for a studio application. Other live guitarists would have 4 or 5 different overdrives, a distortion, or fuzz pedals in the chain to achieve like different kinds of distortion or fuzz. And I can just, like, for a specific riff or something I want to do, or a certain sound I want to achieve, I can dial this in exactly as I want it. I gotta say, Dr. Scientist is a really nice operation that deals with variables. I guess you can say they are really good at coming up with new and very weird ways of doing stuff, and they do it really well. And the possibilities in this one pedal, and I can say this the same for my Warp vinyl, and I'll get back to that in a minute, are endless. So, long story short, from there I go into a Keeley compression, compression pedal, which is awesome. And then my modulation chain starts. That starts with the Chase audio vinyl that I mentioned earlier. And this pedal is insane. It's a chorus tremolo pedal. It's analog, but it's programmable, and the options on this are crazy. And I've spent a long time just figuring out how it works. You can add an expression pedal on it, and it can just go crazy. It's really nice. That takes me to the Red Panda Lab Particle, which is it's really hard to describe because it does all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's basically a modulation noise pedal, I guess, is a nice way of putting it. And it does. I mean, if you're not familiar with the pedal, go on YouTube and find the Particle, and there's tons of reviews and demos of this pedal. It's really, really cool.
Okay.
Then I have a lo-fi dirt delay pedal from Caroline Guitar Company. It's Kilobyte. Really nice pedal. And from there, it's a Blue Sky Strymon. It's a stereo pedal, and this is when I transition to a stereo signal, and I end up at a TC Flashback delay pedal, all in stereo. And from there straight into my Tascam DP008 recorder, and then everything else is a simulation from there. I simulate the speaker stack and the room, and that all happens in the DAW.
Cool. And then the type of guitar that I'm sure you have a few different guitars, but you mentioned that you have a modded Fender Squier Stratocaster. And
yes.
What's the story behind that? What was modded on it? And
well, lots of things. Well, first of all, I have 3 really great guitars. I have a Michael Kelly 55 Mod Shop Telecaster, which is pretty much the only guitar I've used to record my next album. Then I have a Fender Jazz Bass that is just slightly modded. I added a different saddle to it, but that's pretty much it. But my Strat is my first guitar, and it was given to me by my wife, who's sitting next to me. And obviously, I can never sell that. So that's the thing with that. It was a very cheap guitar. Because it was what was it, a Christmas present? Yeah, it was a Christmas present, and I loved it, and it came with a little amp and all the little gear, strap, and all the tools and everything. And I'm sure that guitar enthusiasts would go, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're playing this guitar!" But ever since I got it, I made it my mission to make this guitar playable and really, really nice. So the things I've added to it, first of all, I've added a what's known as a Gilmore switch, and it's really a 7-way switch that allows you to have both bridge and neck pickups on at the same time, or all 3.
Oh, no way! Okay, so instead of just 5 switch, it's a 7 switch.
It's a 7-way switch. It's an extra switch that allows you to add on the neck pickup in whatever position you're in with the 5-way switch.
Nice.
So if you think of it like you think warmer sound, think David Gilmour, which is why it's called the Gilmour switch. He was actually the guy who came up with this idea, or somebody did for him. I don't know. He has it on his guitar, and it gives you this warm, mellow, beautiful sustain that you would expect from a guitar that David Gilmour plays. Other than that, I lowered the strings, I changed the nut and the string trees. I took the original 3 springs out in the back for the tremolo bar or the trem bar, and replaced them with 5 vintage raw springs.
Nice.
And I finished off with a nice set of 10s from Stringjoy. And now this guitar, when I put it in the hands of people who are actually really, really good guitarists, they absolutely love this guitar. And it's really playable. It sounds great. I couldn't ask for anything more from a really expensive Strat. And this is an Affinity Squire. So it's not supposed to sound like it does, but it's really nice, and I'm very proud of what I've done with it and how it sounds. It's a beautiful guitar too. It's tobacco burst. I love it.
Cool.
What can I say?
Special thank you to your wife for getting you that.
Yeah, absolutely. She got me into it. It's her fault. And next thing she knows is that I have a ton of guitar pedals, and they're all over the place. It's crazy, but fun.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way about. I have an old Fender Bronco guitar, and
Ooh, I think I saw that in one of your clips on YouTube. That is a really nice guitar too.
It is. You know what it was originally meant for was as a student guitar. And so it has kind of a shorter, it's a little smaller than, a Stratocaster or a Telecaster. So it's a little bit
like a
smaller.
Shorter neck?
Yeah, it's like a shorter neck, but it still has the same amount of frets. And my husband helped me out with it because the original pickup had kind of a really harsh sound to it. Uh-huh. And so we've tried out a couple of different pickups in it. And that was all we really had to do in regards to the mod on that. He also helped out by someone had, this is a terrible story, but someone had spray painted it pink. It was like this bubblegum pink, but you know how when you use spray paint and you put on the second or third coat too soon, it stays sticky for the lifetime of the, So it was always this like bubblegum pink, and it was sticky. And we got it for this really cheap price, and we're like, well, I liked the color, so we kept it like that for a while, but eventually it was just too sticky and too weird. So he took all the paint off, and we've tried a couple different pickups in there, and I can't remember exactly the model number of pickup that we have in there right now, but if I'll look into it.
That would have been my next question, actually.
Yeah.
What did you end up with?
Well, it's we did have a Tex-Mex in there for a while, and that is by the company that is in Goleta, California.
Yep.
And what's the name of that company now? I feel bad that I don't even remember. Because I'm terrible at being on the spot. That's why I always try to prepare ahead of time.
Right. I probably should know too, but it escapes me that there's a California company that does this, and they're really good at it too.
Yeah. So when I remember that, I will add it into the show notes, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. There could be a separate link on I got it.
But what I wanted to stress the point that even with just a low-end guitar, you can do special mods on them and get them to sound really great, because sometimes you run across a cheap guitar and it may not have the sound, but the neck feels really good, or the body feels really good, and it just has this feeling to it. And so you do a little bit of modifications on it, and then you have this really awesome guitar. So
exactly, and there's ton. The whole thing I did to this Strat was probably less than $50, and it's a completely different guitar.
Seymour Duncan. That's what it is. Seymour Duncan.
Oh, okay. That's a right. God, that should have been the first thing out of my mouth. Seymour Duncan, obviously. Yes. Yeah. I've so the 55 Mod Shop Telecaster, the Michael Kelly I have. Those pops are Fralin pops, and that's partly why it's modded. So I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Kelly guitars, but they make these really, really beautiful. They're actually made in Korea, but they assemble them here and then they mod them like crazy. And this is probably one of the most versatile guitars I've ever come across. And my entire album, the next album, is based on that guitar. So, we're talking about pickups and this would be one of them. I'm sorry, sidetrack. Go on.
Yeah. I know I don't know the exact model number of the pickup that I have in my Bronco, but I know it has the double rails, and it looks really cool. So.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember seeing it on that clip. I was like, oh, that's a really nice guitar. Yeah, I want that. Because you can never have enough guitars, right?
That's right. That's right.
My wife is shaking her head, just for the record.
Oh man, you don't even know. Every time, I get my tax return, it's like, okay, is it going to be another plug-in or another guitar?
Yep. That's it. Exactly there. What do I need now? Yep.
And then speaking of your album, in the pre-interview, when we spoke previously, I thought it was really interesting when you mentioned that you like to keep recording and mixing separated. And I wondered if you could elaborate about what you mean by that.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I do like to keep the processes apart. I consider recording a completely separate matter because it's about getting the best take. And if I were to do that in front of my DAW with one of those in and out or IOs things that you can get nowadays, I would get distracted in 5 seconds, and I call it the mix trap. And you do one take and then you want it to sound really nice instead of concentrating of getting the best take. And also as a vocalist, I shouldn't say I need to be standing up when I'm singing. And for that reason alone, having the Tascam, the DP008, next to me, it's a lot more practical for me. And I know, and some people would say, oh, that thing is only 16-bit. But, for my purposes, it's more than sufficient. I actually... in that sense, I actually separate all three processes. I record the vocals and the guitars on my Tascam. I produce and mix on the Ableton system or the DAW. And I usually master in Studio One. And the reason for this is that I like to, feel like I'm doing different things. And it forces me to be in a different mindset. I'm not mixing music when I'm in Studio One. I am looking at the overall feel of the track or the EP or the album or whatever I'm doing. So it's a very different situation I'm in, and it's a different mindset. And that's why I need to keep, or I feel it's important to keep the various stages separate.
Cool. And then in regards to mastering, what's your take on automated mastering software?
Okay. Well, it's a sore spot. I guess I guess you can say it works for some people. Personally, I would not trust a machine to do something that objective. What can I say about this that would not offend anyone? I feel like we already have algorithms for hit music. And I feel like the last thing we need is an oven that makes everything sound the same. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So my point is, mastering engineers make subjective decisions that are indefinable. Some engineers aim to make a track or an album competitive, and others try to find the potential in an expression, if that makes any sense. I believe that music should move you, and mastering, as I see it, is a really big part of that. So leaving that to a software is just not doing it for me. I need somebody who's actually having an idea or have constructive or have has constructive thinking on the subject, and a machine just doesn't do it. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And I don't care if it's controversial and some people don't agree, but I agree with you.
I think most mastering engineers agree with us.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty safe to say. But yeah, I mean, I know that there's a niche for it, and some people just cannot afford an actual mastering engineer, and I think it has a purpose. But personally, I would never do it, especially because I am actually mastering music for other artists, and I would this would be such a departure from what I believe in that, you know, I just can't see myself doing it or advising anyone to try it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I do see what you mean about there being a niche for it, because I think that it would be pretty good if you're just like maybe a singer-songwriter and you've just recorded something straight into your DAW, like say GarageBand or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you have a demo and you want the demo, to be a little bit louder or whatever. So I can see
Yeah.
where something like that, there being a niche for having the automated mastering. But at
Right.
the same time, it's kind of weird because I don't know. I don't feel comfortable. This is just my own take, so this doesn't reflect your view at all. But for me, it just feels like I don't want to trust. How do I say this right? I don't know how to say this right.
You don't want to trust a machine, really.
Yeah, I don't want to pay a machine. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
I can't see myself paying for something like that.
Right.
I don't want to pay a machine.
Absolutely, I agree, and I know there are tons of other applications for in completely different parts of the world that do other stuff where you are absolutely comfortable having a mechanized system or an automated system doing stuff for you. That is completely beside the point. But we're talking about, at the end of the day, we're talking about art.
Right.
And art is not objective. Art is subjective, and it should be perceived as such. And having a machine, I don't know. I guess if it were diverse enough, or you could have it be abstract. I guess there would be art in having a machine doing certain things, but in this particular case, it's just about getting your audio to be resembling everything else out there, and I don't think we need that. I think we need a different direction.
Right.
There has to be a pushback to all of the stuff that is being thrown at us.
Yeah.
And you pushed a button here. I know you can tell.
It's pushed in me too.
Yeah.
I've got my buttons pushed right now just talking about it.
Right, exactly. It's aggravating at the end of the day, and the only thing we can do is keep showing the world that, hey, there's a better way.
Right.
And this sounds a billion times better than some machine could ever think of.
Right.
Right. That's really where it's at.
Yeah. And I have yet to try out any of the automated mastering software that's out there. I know that SoundCloud just partnered with somebody,
Yeah.
and I don't know about that or anything, but I'll probably try it out just to see what it does. And I can A/B it because I have some friends who do mastering, so I could
Right.
send them my track and then send it to the machine and go, okay, which one
Yep.
do I like better and why, and get
Yeah.
into all that. But I haven't
Well,
done that
it's
yet.
hit and miss. You can get lucky with the machine, and it just hits something. But imagining a machine doing a whole album,
Right.
I just I just can't get behind that. I really can't.
Yeah.
And I'm old, so I guess that's part of it.
I don't know, because I've been speaking with some younger engineers too, and they feel the same way. It's like it's too, just like you were saying, it's too subjective
Yeah,
to put into that
that's
box.
actually very encouraging that you're speaking to younger engineers that have that opinion, because they are the guys that will be the future. They'll be the future Ludwigs or Cats or whatever their names are, and they'll have a say in this. And if they do good work and master some albums that are gonna be awesome, this will be a very minute part of the music industry that uses this kind of technology, and I would discourage it.
Yeah. In regards to dithering, I wanted to get into this a little bit,
Yep.
because basically what I learned, and it wasn't for very long, so I don't know very much about it, but in regards to dithering, I've learned that you would use it when you are, say you recorded, or say I recorded at something at really high bit rate, and
Mm-hmm.
then I wanted to bounce it down for CD, so it would be
Mm-hmm.
16 bit, and that's when I would use dithering, is in that
Mm-hmm.
bounce down to
Right.
a lower quality. But
Yeah.
you mentioned something about triangular dither, and I have no idea what that is. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, I mean it's basically the so okay, so a really quick explanation of dithering. And there's really no easy way of explaining what dithering does without getting really long-winded. But basically, it's an introduction of a tiny amount of inaudible noise. And really, what it does, it masks what is referred to as quantization distortion. And it happens when you go from, say, 24-bit to 16-bit or 32 to 24. And dithering should be used as you exit a system, or when an audio file comes to full circle. Meaning, if you are rendering out for another purpose, for instance, you just did a mix, it's at 24-bit, and now you want it mastered. So when you render out the final mix, you dither, preferably triangular, which seems to be the shape of the waveform of the noise that fits most situations. Certain mastering engineers would say, no, I would prefer rectangular because blah 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 my system, and oh my god, this is a completely separate technical long-haired explanation, and there's tons of different religions out there that say no, you should only dither once ever, and you should never dither blah blah blah, but really I think that the guy who got it right most of the time is a guy in England called Ian Shepherd, and he has a blog about it. And basically the headline is "When in doubt, dither." So you can't really. I guess you can mess up, but it's really hard to do. And I doubt that most people can even tell when it's dithered or not. And especially because the kind of stuff that we do are in a world where noise floor is not really that big a deal. Because we have a certain amount of dynamic range enough. You see, now I get really into detail here, and I didn't mean to, but it's a big subject. And when should I dither? When should I not? And I actually, this whole discussion sparked me to write a blog about how to mix for mastering, and dithering is part of that. So and I have this blog up on Medium, and it basically explains what you can expect from a master, and when you mix in your bedroom, and why you need to dither. So go there, read that. It's sensible information.
Okay, yeah, I read part of it, but I haven't read the entire thing yet. And you make some really good points in there, and you have some good feedback too. I read one of the comments at the bottom, so yeah, it's definitely a big topic. But yeah, thanks for explaining a little bit more about what it
No
is
worries,
and
and
stuff.
I'm sorry for all the craziness, because once you start talking about this, it goes on and on and on,
It
and
does.
why dither and why not, and why record 24-bit and why not 60, blah blah. The list goes on, and at some point you get to the level where it becomes religion and not really based on fact and the situations we are in, because you and I are bedroom recording musicians,
Right.
and really what that means is that we're not in a situation, we're not in a control situation, let's say that, which means we have noise. So noise floor is out the window in the first place. So it doesn't matter. And even if I record in 16-bit, and now you got me started on this one too. And if I had to record in 24-bit to figure out the advantages in that scenario, I would have to be in space to have a noise floor that would be quiet enough for me to get advantage of that. Because remember, I end up with a dynamic range of 10 dB. That's it. And 16-bit recording is more than efficient to handle that if you know how to work with it. So and my blog approaches that whole problem, and I'm sure there's going to be people listening to this who are knowledgeable about bit rates and bit depth and all of that stuff are going to go, he's wrong. Whatever.
Well,
I'm fine with what I'm doing, and it sounds fine, and I have no trouble. So there it is.
yeah, I'll post a link to that in the show notes so other people can read that article too. I think it's really good.
Please do. Yeah, the more people who know about this, the better. And it's not really such a mystery. And read this blog, and it'll take the fear out of mixing for you.
There are a couple of other items that you mentioned that I don't know what they are, and that is the K14 and also the DR10. What are these things?
Yeah, I mean, people like me like to throw around these, expressions, but really what it is, they're standards. So the K14, let's start with that. Bob Katz, don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a mastering hero of mine.
I have his book about audio mastering.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So he developed a standard called K14 or K something. And there are various levels of that. There's K20, K14, and K12. And basically what it is, it allows you to have a minimum, in the case of K14, it allows you to have a minimum of 14 dB of dynamic range. And
And what it means is that it gives music a lot more breathing room.
I see.
Nowadays, and this pertains to what's known as the loudness war, and now we're getting into that. So the loudness war is an ongoing thing, and I don't think that'll ever end. Well, yeah, it might, because there's a new wave, and I'll get into that in a minute. Some albums that have been released recently, for instance, what can I think of? Kanye West, and I don't remember the name of the album, but the latest one he did has a dynamic range of 6, and that is incredibly loud. And really what that means is that you listen to that album and you're done. Your ears are fatigued. You cannot hear anything objectively, and you certainly cannot deal with critical listening. So for me, that is a no-no. And what Bob Katz is introducing with his K14 or whatever K is the ability to master still close to 0 dB, but having a lot more headroom in the music. So it gives the music ability to breathe, really. And it's a return to how things were when we still had vinyl, because you couldn't get that loud with vinyl. It would simply have the needle jump in the grooves, and it would be awful. Oh yeah, so the K system, I've been using that originally. Since I'm master for other people, and including myself, who get a little airplay at small independent stations that don't have automated level management, K14 just wasn't loud enough. So when I learned that, or when I kind of experienced that firsthand, listening to those stations, I got hold of a plugin called Dynameter from Meterplugs, and just adding to the long list of plugins I already have. It really gives you a chance of, or a possibility of mastering at a competitive level with a decent dynamic range still. And in this case, it will be a standard of dynamic, the DR, the dynamic range is what that stands for.
Okay.
Of 10 dB.
Oh, okay. So that's what that means. Okay, so K14,
Yeah.
14, 12 dB, etc.
Yep.
And then DR10 would be dynamic range
Dynamic
10.
range 10.
Okay.
Exactly. And that also happens to be the new AES standard for broadcast, actually.
Nice. Okay.
That
Wow.
follows that. So the thing is, if you do that, if you master at that level and you send it to broadcast radio that offer automated level management, it would not do anything to your track, because you would be at that level.
Right.
Now, if somebody were to send something that would be mastered, let's say 3 dB louder, or it would be at a dynamic range of like 8 or 7, let's just say that, it would be significantly louder, but the level management would squish it down. It would basically compress the audio down to be at 10. So that means that, guess which track would sound better and more dynamic?
The louder one.
No.
The softer one.
Yeah, it's the softer one, exactly. Because it wouldn't be squished. At
see.
first glance, it would be more open, it would breathe, but it would be just as loud.
I see.
Perceived level. So
Oh.
nothing would happen to it. So if you stick to this, if you do master at 10, what you actually play on the radio would be how it sounded in your studio or after you master it.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. Now it makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the whole idea behind dynamic range and how to master at a certain level.
That's cool. That's cool. And you also love collaborating with people, not just as clients, but for mastering. But what do you do to work with people remotely and also in real time? Because I remember you mentioning something about that, is that you're able to work in real time with people.
Yeah. I rarely do work in real time. I do love to collaborate with people. I should say that absolutely. I actually prefer not to be in the room. Rory Kelly, not sure if you're familiar with her. She's a singer-songwriter from Long Island. She's awesome. I recorded her vocal for the track "Talk to Me" in my living room, and it was only when I told her not to, do what I told her. So, and basically just go off on a tangent on her own. And we recorded another, I think 6 or 8 tracks with the vocals just playing around. Those were the tracks I actually ended up using for the song.
Nice.
The ones that I want this, and I want you to, can you do this, blah, 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 were lame and not full of life, as her own interpretation of the track were. So that's the thing. And her and Dean Johnson, who plays the double bass, I recorded him in his basement up the street from where I live for another track of mine. And I said nothing because he's a world-renowned double bass player, and he pretty much played with everyone. So I didn't say a word when he recorded my stuff, but we did do a lot of tracks, so I could chop him up afterwards, and use what I needed. But I should say I really prefer just sending out ideas to people that I collaborate with. And I've collaborated with a bunch of people everywhere, in Denmark, Germany, and here in the States. And what comes back to me is a lot more vivid and a lot more full of life than I could ever hope for, even think of. So me being involved in that process is not necessarily helpful. In fact, I think that most of the times I am stifling that process, and I would rather have any artist, whether it's a vocalist, a guitarist, a bass player, a drummer, or whatever, be on their own and figure it out and come up with new stuff that would surprise me. And it's a really creative way of working, and I think that you'll see a lot of that in future releases from pretty much anyone, really.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It makes a lot of sense. I was talking with a woman, her name's Pro Tools Girl.
Pro Tools Girl.
Yeah, Pro Tools Girl. And she was talking, I asked her the question about, collaborating, because Pro Tools just came out with this new thing. I haven't explored it yet, but basically you can collaborate and send projects straight through Pro Tools, and it's a really interesting thing. It's not a new idea though, because she had something similar to that years ago. And it was a website. So that's going to be a really interesting show. So stay tuned for that one, where she talks about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, when is that?
It's going to be coming up in July. I don't know exactly when yet, but it's going to be coming up in July.
Yeah, be sure to listen in on that. That's interesting. And there are a number of platforms that offer something like what's it called, Bender or something that does that. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I'm sure I have a profile on it, but you basically work on tracks that you're working for, and you can actually export directly from Ableton directly to this, in share stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
It's interesting. It's a new
That's
way
cool.
of working. Yeah.
And speaking of collaborating with people, there's a particular project you're working on now that is a remote project. Can you let us know a little bit about it, or is it too early still?
Well, it's too early for actually playing tracks, but what I can say that first of all, it's a really interesting project for me. It's very heavy. It reminds me a bit of Asia and Yes, and it's a huge departure from what I've done with my own stuff. So it's good for me. That I like that contrast. It's a guitar player. He's in Ohio, Jerry Von Friend. He reached out to me via a friend of mine, Dave Davies, who's got independent share radio. And Jerry heard me on that show. Dave played one of my tracks, and he asked if he could send me some of his tracks, and he did, and I loved them. And long story short, we're now writing and recording an EP, possibly an album, and the trio. Well, right now it's a trio because we're working as a trio. It'll consist of Jerry and me, and Brian Young will be playing the drums. Brian is the drummer for Jesus and the Mary Chain. And the funny thing is, none of us have actually ever met. And we obviously looking forward to this, but the interesting thing is that we completely hit it off musically. And Jerry writes the basic music. I write the lyrics and the melody lines for the vocals. I sing them, and then at the end of the line, Brian adds the drums as he sees them fitting in. The project is called Wherever the Skies, and I am guessing that an EP will be out by the end of the year, hopefully. So that's an interesting project for me. Other than that, I am right now, as we speak, knee deep in editing my next electronic album, which is titled California. This is a collaboration with a guy called Anselmo James, who actually lives in New York, and I've met him on several occasions. But he also records at home and sends me his tracks on via Dropbox. So go figure. I guess this is just a new norm, and people work together that way. Being at a rehearsal space, I guess it could also be an East Coast thing. I'm not sure. But having a rehearsal space or a studio, is just not feasible. So people work at home in like, working on tracks in their privacy, and figuring out stuff and doing it on their own times. I guess that's just how it is now.
Yeah, that's the way it is for a lot of people now. You're just collaborating with different people from all over the world. So
yeah, it's interesting, and you have access to. Just think of the access in terms of if I needed somebody to play the djembe on some track, I could reach out on one of my social media platforms and probably have somebody record it for me in Buenos Aires or wherever the person is. It's a really, really it's a much bigger world now. But it's also, I guess there's drawbacks because, I can go on with this. I'm not sure where this leads, but it's exciting to me that there are these possibilities that you would never have had before all of this started happening. This revolution started happening. Because that's what I think it is. It's a revolution, and it really puts
technology and the possibilities back in the hands of the musicians and the artists who actually work with this. And I think it's a very, very encouraging process. There's drawbacks. How do you distribute all of the stuff? That's a different matter. But I think it'll find a balance eventually, because people want music, and they're going to figure out a way to get it.
Right. It's true. And then, speaking of being a singer, you also sing in a Police cover band called Roxanne. And that sounds like a lot of fun, a lot of work, but also a lot of fun. What's the story about that?
Yeah. These are guys I absolutely love. This is my longest run in the same band, in one of the same band, with the same band members. In 2014, at a gig, we accidentally celebrated our 25th anniversary, which really meant that we had been together longer than the actual Police.
Wow.
So that was quite a blast, and very surprising to us. All of a sudden we realized, wait a minute, hang on, didn't we play our first gig and then at some date and some venue, blah blah blah? And we're like, yeah, guys, that's 25 years ago.
Wow.
And then, bottles popped and we went nuts. It was fun. It is an absolute blast, and when we get together, it's just crazy and mayhem. I have so much history with that band, and I love them dearly. One of the very few things I actually miss in Denmark. And I should say that I'm going back in October to play a couple of gigs with them, and it'll be like I never left. Back when we started, one of our first gigs was at a festival. A festival that actually doesn't exist anymore, so that means we outlived them too. It's kind of interesting.
Wow.
It's a huge tent on a Thursday afternoon, just when the festival started. And just before we got on stage, it started raining and the tent filled to capacity, which meant 10,000 people.
Yikes.
So we had a lot of fun, and the Police material just worked with a crowd like that. And, we never looked back since. It's a really, really good run.
And what do you use on your vocal effects on stage?
Oh, great question. I like that. So I like to be in control when I'm on stage with this band. Jams happen often, and indiscriminately.
Yeah, especially with the dub kind of stuff that the Police used to do. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And in that band in particular, so I rely on having a TC mic mechanic on the floor next to me. It's a great tap delay and reverb, and it's basically a stomp box for vocalists. I love it. It's so easy to use, and you just tap the tempo and go. It's so great.
Nice. Yeah, I have you mentioned it was TC Electronic, is that right?
Yeah, TC Electronic mic mechanic.
Yeah, okay. I have a TC Electronic. I have the Voice Live 2. It was the very first year that it came out, and it doesn't have the I can upgrade to get it, but it doesn't have the looping effect in there. It was before they even put that in. So
balls.
Yeah, it's okay though.
This one doesn't have anything like that either. It's probably, the mic mechanic is probably resembling what you have, and then they upgraded the version you have or don't have. I don't need looping really for my purposes, but I need crazy delays, and that's what it does. It's good. I really like it. I can't rave enough about it. And the fact that it's balanced in and out just makes the sound guy really envious. Because when I bring a stomp box on stage, and he goes, "Oh my God, a vocalist with a stomp box, that's going to be awful."
I know.
And then when I show it to him, he's like, "Oh, this is not going to be awful at all. This is actually going to be really easy." And he never notices.
Yeah, it happened to me when we play live. It happens to me all the time, and especially being a girl, because I get up on stage with a vocal box, and they're like, "Oh no, there's going to be delay and reverb, and it's just going to be too much for the front of house engineer to deal with," and he gets all upset and stuff. And I'm like, no, I have my own monitor and everything, because TC Helicon also made a little, they don't make it anymore, but it's called the Voice Solo XT, and it's this little monitor that fits on a mic stand, and it points right at my face. So I can monitor myself and hear myself just fine with a bunch of reverb and delay and stuff like that, and that way the engineer who's doing the sound doesn't have to worry about any feedback and stuff from the stage monitors. So
Awesome.
their products are really, really great. And had kind of mixed feelings when I think it was TC Electronic and TC Helicon were purchased by Aphex Audio. And at first I had mixed feelings about that, and I was like, that's like, this is a product that I really, really like. But at the same time, I really like Aphex products too. And I really like, Aphex invented that signal processing called the oral exciter. And
I had one.
Yeah, it's really great for female vocals. In my experience anyway, because it kind of, it gives you, it kind of, I don't know what it does to the high end, but, or the higher frequencies, but whatever it does, it seems to suit my vocal really nicely. And I really like Aphex. And if it were anybody to purchase TC products, then I'd say Aphex would be a good person to buy it. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's TC's always been like, I remember when the 2290, I think it was called, the big rack mounted 2-unit delay came out, and everybody were wetting themselves. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And if you were a studio or an audio like a PA system company, you would have to have these multiples.
Yeah.
It was just a must-have.
Right.
And it was in every rack that and you still see them. You still go into a studio and they sit there. They sit there next to the tube tech. Everything's still the same, basically, like 30 years later.
Wow.
So, and now, of course, now everything is much more expensive, but it's the same gear.
Right.
Go figure.
Yep. Hey, Olav, thank you so much for taking the time to come on my show and letting me pick your brain about all of these different topics. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And anytime.
What's the best way for people to contact you for your mastering services?
Oh, okay. So I guess the easiest and the quickest way is through Twitter or Instagram, and the handles for those are both the same, and it's at Olzios. It's at OLZIOS. That's probably the quickest way.
Okay, I'll post that in the show notes. And then where's the best place for people to find your music online?
The best and the only place to find my music online is Bandcamp. So if you go on Bandcamp and you look for DVR music in one word, you will find me. Okay. And please feel free to follow and comment if you want. It's always nice to get comments from people who listen to my stuff. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'll post those links in there in the show notes. And thanks again for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
One more thank you to Olav and his knowledge about mastering. Before we listen to one of his mixes, let's have a few shout-outs. I wanted to give a shout out to some of the companies whose products I've been using in my recording of the Lady Audio podcast. So here it goes. Primacoustic for, I think it's Primacoustic, or is it Primacoustic? I don't know. Primacoustic for the VoxGuard VU sound shield that I use, and also for Logic Pro 10 as my digital audio workstation. Roland for the MA8 stereo micro studio monitors. They're little tiny things. Sometimes they don't sound all that great, but actually when you're mixing or mastering and you're trying to A/B mixes, that's when they really, really come in handy. And Motu for the sturdy old Traveler interface. Yep, I'm still using the old Traveler as my interface. And Audio Technica for the ATH M50X headphones. They're really great headphones. I have them on right now. Haha. Today's show was brought to you by me, Lady Audio. It's a lot of work and I really love doing it. And so I just wanted to thank you for your donations and let you know that every little bit helps and that I put every penny back into the show. One of my hopes is to spread the word about how important quality audio is, and the more people I can reach and the more I can learn for my own projects, the better. If you are in the audio industry and would like to be on the show, please send me an email. My email address is clara@ladyaudio.com. And in case you didn't know, there's a video slideshow version of each podcast available on my YouTube page. Just visit youtube.com/c/Lady Audio Podcast to subscribe. I'll post the link in the show notes too. Take care, everyone. Talk to you next time.
The light is fading in a wondrous way. It holds a promise of a better day. I wasn't ready for what was coming at me. I placed my trust so I could see over the moon. Rolling in clover, you'll be there soon.